Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching The Week in Review. I'm your host, Ade Darami. And as ever, I have my friend and co-host, Mamadou Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, welcome to the program.
As ever, I'm glad to be here.
Great to hear that. Now, for viewers, both old and anybody joining for the first time, we've got 10 stories. Stories that we've broadcast on QTV during the week. And we go into some depth into these stories and discuss them between Mr. Mboj and I. So we've got the ECOWAS speaker, Parliament speaker is here. We've got Gambia's global leadership. We've got World Tourism Day, and we've got stories about the road to Cameroon. Lots and lots of good stories, all of them very good, as I'm sure you'll agree with me. So, first story. The speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament was here, having also recently paid a visit to another country that is also holding elections. And he had some words of advice. Have a look.
Also preparing. The delegation had also visited Cape Verde, where the island nation is also preparing for general election on October 17 this year. Speaker Tunis also shared with the media what he thinks a country like the Gambia can learn from the island nation.
And believe me, you move around Cape Verde, you don't even know that there is election coming in just 2 or 3 weeks. You will not even know that there is election coming up in just 2 or 3 weeks. People are so particular about security. And believe me, if all of us in West Africa, all the countries in West Africa, only decide to borrow that leaf from Cape Verde, we'll have peace in this region.
If you know me, you know I had to play that particular clip, Mr. Mboj, no surprises there. But on a more serious note, Cape Verde for many years, became independent in 1975, has been setting the agenda, and it's something that I've mentioned time and time again. And the reason I showed that particular clip is because essentially what the speaker was saying there is something I've been saying, that countries should go and learn from them in terms of how to run a democracy. I mean, you've probably been as bored as anyone else hearing me talk about it. But this comes from the Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, and he's telling our parliamentarians, say, look, I've been there, let's learn some lessons from it. Can we learn lessons from Cape Verde?
Of course, we can, wherever you see good practice. There's something to learn. Some lessons are universal in many ways when one can go and learn. But here I hope that I wouldn't bore you by telling you, actually, we started, we were among the pioneers of democracy.
Sure.
Before
we lost our way.
Before we lost our way.
Sure.
So the institutional memory is there, embedded somewhere there. So absolutely, we've been doing elections for a while now.
Sure.
We've had many elections.
Yes.
And what is it we can learn from Cape Verde? That was very interesting. The fact that a few weeks before elections, there was nobody, you couldn't see any activity.
Yes, I mean, I was gonna kind of, if I'd been there, I would have picked him up on it, because when I was last there and they had an election, there was a lot of activity, but a lot of it was people dancing in the streets. They love their music. And you know, both parties were trying to kind of show each other in terms of, you know, music, and so there was a lot of that. But apart from that, I didn't hear anybody going on radio and TV to say, you know, let's have peace, let's not have violence. The thought of even making that broadcast didn't even come up when I was there, in spite of the fact that it was keenly contested, because the previous election had been won by a very, very slim margin. And so, you know, it was a very tight contest.
Absolutely, and let's just try to put it here a bit in context. In 2021, I understand that by the end of the year, by December, 13 African countries will have held presidential elections.
Indeed.
That's it. So, and all the time you do hear these cliches of violence,
Sure.
rigged elections, and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
But is it really true? Zambia recently,
Yeah.
the incumbent was defeated.
Yes.
What was the name?
Absolutely.
That's it. So for me, I don't want to go in that direction,
Yeah, sure.
looking at that negative element. It sort of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy
It's
in
true.
many ways.
What we've had is people disputing elections, but that's not unique to Africa. I think in America, if I'm not mistaken, the one who lost the last election is still disputing that he lost. But I think, you know, again, this has kind of become a bit of a cliche about, you know, people disputing elections. And in Cape Verde, famously, in I think 2011, the president, the incumbent, lost by 11 votes. And everybody said, ask for a recount. And, you know, they have a small electorate. And he just shrugged and said, I don't think they made a mistake. He didn't even bother asking for, and it was within the margin where he could have asked for a recount, but he didn't. And you know, that was kind of the sort of thing that's how they do politics there. And I think it also helps that when you go around, people are engaged on the policies. They question people on their manifestos. Let's not forget, this is a country that has an 87% literacy rate. So of course you're not going to fool the public by just saying any old rubbish. You say something, they'll say, no, that's not what I read in your manifesto. So I think that also helps, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, the quality of the leader and the fact that Cape Verde, they've had continuous, haven't they? They've had long years of democracy.
And changes of government.
Changes of government and the like. But coming back here, anybody, if you feel that you've got legitimate reasons for contesting results, by all means do so.
Sure.
But here, then we follow the courts.
Indeed.
There's a process in place.
Sure.
And we must trust the courts.
Sure.
Whatever they say, we must do.
Sure.
That was why recently, for instance, let me just bring this in, when the UTG staff, with that court order, they said they were going out. In spite of the court order, they were going to go on this strike. Right. I thought, no, you don't quite understand how democracy works.
That's right.
We must accept
the
courts. We have to respect the courts. That's the only thing that can really keep the glue together. Sure. Otherwise, we're not doing democracy in the way that we should, to be quite honest.
This is true. So yes, I mean, you know, all countries are different, but just to go back to our story, I think, you know, yes, perhaps we could learn from Cape Verde, but you know, they became independent 10 years after the Gambia, and as I said, they've had successive elections, and they've all been peaceful, including changes of government. So thanks for that. Now, Gambians, since I came here, I've been arguing with my fellow Gambians that, you know, there are lots of things that Gambia should be proud about, and they always ask me to name things. Well, I won't name some of the historical stuff. I could name something very, very recent. What am I talking about? Check this out. Have a look at this video.
Gambia government is very much sensitive to climate change and all its related issues. This is why we're putting up not only our NDC, but the NDC will be supported by other tools, like the long-term vision. The objective of this long-term vision is to complement what we have already in the NDC. And that is, by 2050, we have zero net carbon emission. So what that calls for is for decarbonization of the economy.
Decarbonization of the economy. It's not an easy one. And the reason we have this piece here is because on the Paris Climate Agreement, it has been found that Gambia is the only country in the world that is on track to meet certain important commitments. I will repeat that. Gambia is the only country in the world on track. Samboj, I have to be honest, when I heard that and I saw that, and this is from a very respected website, I was surprised. Were you?
Oh, absolutely. This is climate action, what is it called? Tracker. CAP.
Yeah.
Yes, I simply couldn't believe it when I looked at it. But again, I realized that before when we're not really industrialized in many ways.
And I think that came out in the report, that yes, it might be that we are small and that's why. But when you sort of delve down into the tracker, what they're saying is there are lots of other small countries that haven't made the same commitment, that have not, when they've scrutinized, you know, what they've done, haven't done as much as the Gambia has done. But yes, I think the fact that we are not industrialized to the same level as many of these other, including some small countries, has certainly helped Gambia's cause, but nonetheless something to be proud of.
Absolutely, I'm sure there's that part. And I also suspect that when it comes to right now, most of our policies across the sectors, my suspicion is that these international agencies influence, at least since Barrow. They're influencing so much of what we do.
That's
They
right.
do World Bank,
UN,
EU.
Sure.
So all of these groups are influencing so much. And you know that climate change is on the top of the agenda. You see, the biggest polluters, when I looked at the list, you know, we are the only ones who are, compatible, they call it, Paris Agreement compatible, as it were, and the rest of it almost sufficient. I think they had something like that.
Almost sufficient,
So
you have insufficient.
Yes. That's it. And you look at all these, the biggest polluters, EU countries, the G20. Is Britain is the only one amongst them that is almost sufficient.
Exactly.
So you wonder what is going on.
Yes.
This agenda essentially came from the West.
Very
we
much so,
essentially know that.
And yet, and as you said, and what's interesting about the tracker is that what they're saying is that, look, the reason Gambia has been able to hit this is because of commitments by the government, and they don't see that they're quite critical that in many of the countries that are the worst polluters, China, the United States of America, and so on, they don't see that. Russia, they don't see that commitment from the government. They make noises about it, but they said we are not seeing the commitment that you mean it. And so this is, they're kind of using Gambia, little Gambia, to shame them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, yes, it would lead us to ask the question, why is that? you know what I mean? Why somehow to them, and China as well, not just the West, and China as well, all of them. That's it. To all of them, yes, they will talk about it, but yet they prioritize, their economy.
Their economy.
That's it, the industrialization and that sort of thing. So for me, I will ask now, yes, it is wonderful to be there, but there's always a price.
There is.
That's it. By being there, number one, what do I have to forego?
Well,
how would it affect, for instance, my industrialization strategy, if we've got one?
Yeah.
So what would it mean
in
effect, in reality? What are we foregoing when we look around the world? There's something.
There was a kind of interesting analysis of the tracker where somebody was saying that, yes, you're criticizing these big industrialized nations, but what you're asking them to do is that in the interest of something which many of them are probably still skeptical about, you're saying close down certain industries and lose tens of thousands, if not millions of jobs. That's not going to happen, and that is the dichotomy. That's the fight that's going on in these countries. That why do we need to close down certain industries that are the worst polluters when we don't have jobs to give the people who work in those industries already?
Absolutely. So all these targets about 2030 to the threshold you're looking for is 1.5 degree Celsius.
1.5 degrees Celsius. I beg your pardon.
That sort of thing. And yes, and many analysts are saying that fat chance.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So this is it. For us, this is really, especially low-income countries, people like us, climate change, we're already seeing the effects. And we are told that just with the 1 degree percentage, 1% rise, as it were, in sea levels, Banjul is gone.
It's gone.
So
for us, it's
existential.
Right.
So how do we do it? We will really need to work on a climate policy, climate change strategy. One wonders whether we've got that, where we've calculated all our interest, risk benefit sort of calculations with all of these things. And see, but it's really quite difficult, but fantastic to be right up there.
Absolutely. So well done, the Gambia, and keep it up, and don't rest on your laurels. Now on to something else. The Gambia, like many countries in this region, I've mentioned Cape Verde again, heavily dependent on tourism. And tourism, more than most, I mean, the whole world has been affected by COVID-19, but it has affected tourism more than most, and tourism-dependent countries more than most. Have a look at this clip, and when we come back, we'll discuss it. Have a look.
Aissatou Yande, a local fabric and accessories seller. She says that the craft market was almost non-existent due to the coronavirus, adding that it was challenging and had affected their only source of livelihood.
I prepare to welcome any country tourists if they come to Gambia, because tourism is our anything. So if the people come, we welcome them nice, talk to them nice, and give them sometimes half price.
Alpha Cisse is a wood carver at the Senegambia craft market. He says his earnings sometimes could hit thousands of dollars, but this has been severely affected by the closure of the season.
We are praying good season.
Young man there says we are praying. It was World Tourism Day at the beginning of this week where we're discussing this, and one of the things that you saw there, people who work in the tourism industry saying how much they've suffered and how much it has impacted them. Now here in the Gambia, there was rejoicing when the Tourism Minister Ahmad Ba mentioned that in fact there's been an announcement by the United Kingdom that people can come back to the Gambia as a holiday destination. Given the green light was the phrase he used. Mr. Mboj, we saw some people there. You've been to these areas. You've seen the impact. Can we? It's a tough question, but can you see a stage where we can get back to near or close to where we were at the height of the sort of tourism?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether anybody can really answer that because I think it's tourism generally worldwide, and we are still in the midst of a pandemic.
Indeed,
We
indeed.
really do not know, can we have another variant?
Yeah.
So there are so many ifs.
Yeah.
So when that chap there said, we're praying, I said, yes.
Yeah,
These are such uncertain times.
they really are.
This is when we really resort to praying. And yes, a wonderful thing in Britain's their traffic light system.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
been
quite.
green
We're
listed,
green.
you know,
Yeah.
the green light is on.
Sierra Leone still red. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think because, again, I know that about 43 or more, perhaps close to half of the number that come here are from Britain.
That's
British
right.
people.
That's right.
So that matters a lot.
It does.
So
indeed, yeah.
my suspicion is this. Last year was so bad.
Mm-mm.
I think maybe this year will be slightly
I
better.
think it's a tough one to call.
It's a tough
for
one
sure.
to call, but
Yeah.
maybe the jabs
Yes, yes.
around the world.
Yes.
you
I mean,
know,
before we came in
maybe-
here, I decided to kind of look at the kind of stories that British newspapers did on World Tourism Day. And it was interesting. A lot of them, I don't know whether they've been prompted, but a lot of them were actually encouraging their the British citizens, saying, look, you know, this is like you're being released from prison. Go abroad. Spend your money, you know, because you'll be creating jobs in the industry and in the countries that you go and visit. And so there seems to be, you know, quite almost across the board actually encouraging people. So that I thought would be an encouraging sign for the Gambia.
Oh, fantastic. I also
Yeah.
got that sense,
Yeah.
actually, when I was, you know, online reading some comments and looking at certain experiences what people
Yeah.
are explaining. So you get the sense that people want to go out.
Yes, yes.
They want to travel.
Yeah.
You know, they're just tired of, you know,
Being cooped up.
Being cooped up, you know,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
become claustrophobic
Yeah.
as you were. So you
Quite.
just want to go out.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see
Yeah.
what will happen, and also what we do here.
Sure, sure.
The safety measures, how do you reassure them?
That's right. I mean, I think it's about the
Assurance.
preparedness for ourselves to receive people. I think if we can assure people that if you come here, you're going to be safe, and we're not talking about you're going to be robbed, we're talking about in terms of your health, I think people will come. Sure.
And that also matters. And there's something else going on. The other day, somebody called me from England, an English person who usually comes for holidays, and then telling me, I've been reading online that crime has gone up. People, there's a lot of robberies and burglaries and
quite.
all the rest of it, and that there's going to be violence. There's more of that. Then I had to remind him. I said, to be quite honest, we don't have any more crime than when you were here.
Quite.
as it were. So when you follow the media, we will
Sure.
take one or two things, and it tends to inflate
Sure.
that story, but you don't really see the context.
No,
Calm down.
Listen, as you know, I lived in the United Kingdom for a long time, and when I hear that from people in the United Kingdom, I usually just send them a link about the crime statistics in their country. That usually shuts them up.
Absolutely.
So-
so this is it. We
yeah.
shouldn't overplay it.
At
There's
all,
something
at all.
going on,
Sure.
but let's put it in its right context
Sure.
so that we can deal with it.
Yeah.
When you inflate it too much, then you might become overwhelmed. You wouldn't even know where to start
Well,
and
that's
start, fighting phantoms.
Indeed, yes, and we don't want to be doing that. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Now, if you live in the Gambia or you are a follower of things going in the Gambia, one of the big things that's happened this year is that, of course, the Gambia has qualified for AFCON, Africa Cup of Nations, which takes place in Cameroon next year. And in order to help the team, the Football Federation made an announcement recently. Have a look at this clip.
Tasked with raising over $100 million, The committee has 3 months to help coordinate fundraising drives for Gambia's Africa Cup of Nations campaign in Cameroon. Gambia is drawn in Group F alongside Tunisia, Mali and Mauritania. Here is Lamin Kaba Bajo, President of the Gambia Football Federation and Vice Chairman of the Road to Cameroon National Coordinating Committee.
For the local fundraising, as Musa has alluded to, every Gambian or every sector of the community, the Gambian community, society is expected to contribute one way or the other. He mentioned the civil service, and I will add the public service, the both civil and public service. The government will work that out.
To amplify the fundraising activities, the media is also integrated into the committee through the Sports Journalists Association of the Gambia, SJAG. Head of the Media and Publicity Committee of the NCC, Musa Sise, urged the Gambian media to support the fundraising campaign.
The Media and Publicity Committee is going to drive all these things. We are going to be the mouthpieces, we are going to be the engine. All that they're going to do is that give us the product and we go to town with it. Probably that is why our responsibility in here is so huge and is as important as anybody's.
Both Mr. Mboja and I are big football fans, and so of course we've been following things to do with not just football here, but football around the world. Mr. Mboja, 125 million actually is the amount they got to find in 3 months. Can they do it? I know, I keep asking you these difficult questions.
A tall order.
Yeah.
But I think it can be done.
Sure.
If you have, if you can galvanize private sector, everybody,
Indeed,
have
yes.
a telethon.
Yeah, I thought of that. I mean, I was intrigued when they said, they've got this committee, it includes the media, and I did wonder what the methods were going to be, but that would be one great thing that would actually get everybody involved. People can phone in and so on. Corporate entities can
Kids can take from their pocket money, savings, whatever, $10, $20. It's a national effort.
Sure.
If we can rally the population, the people, everybody, possibly we might be able to do it. It just depends on how we do it.
Sure. Now, we looked at the teams in our group. Mauritania, Mali and Tunisia. A tough group,
That's
you think?
In that order.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a tough group. These things, it sort of takes experience.
Yeah, sure.
In many ways.
Sure.
I remember the England-Italy final.
Right.
Somebody said to me, you know that the Italians will win, that experience. English had a
English,
brilliant team,
indeed.
but the experience somehow
That's right.
kicks in. So, of course, we wish them luck.
Yeah.
I think they will perform reasonably well.
Sure.
But I've got my expectations in check.
Sure.
By
I think
reality.
all of us. But if we go back to the money matter, there was an intriguing bit, and that's why I chose that particular bit, because he talked about the civil service contributing to this. I wasn't sure how that. He said government would work out the sort of modalities on that. I don't know how, but I think your suggestion of a telethon is probably a better way. Then you galvanize the whole the nation. Really.
Absolutely.
And Gambians in the diaspora.
Absolutely. That's it. In the diaspora, everywhere.
Sure.
So there's a way that really we can generate 125 million.
Yeah.
Dollars.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if you think, again, we've mentioned this before, in a year when, remittances were meant to have gone down, they went through the roof. 2020, people sent $588 million, I beg your pardon, to the Gambia from, official sources. So, and that obviously is a market to tap into, the diaspora, people who feel very connected. They might not live here, but they feel very connected still.
Oh, absolutely. They feel connected. Yes, there's a huge mine there to tap. Maybe not the civil service. I mean, earlier I said private sector because these are businesses. They make profits and stuff. Sure. But civil servants, we all talk about the low pay and all of that. So one shouldn't put any pressure on any profession as such. Sure. It's just that any organization, what you can do.
Yes.
We know that this is the target.
Sure.
Then you just be mindful of that. But again, you cannot do something that hurts you. Yeah. So you see what you can do. Sure. So no pressure on any of these professional bodies or anybody. Quite. So let's make it a national effort.
Sure.
And here, as you said, the national sort of includes also the diaspora. So once we put it, on such a canvas, I think we can
Yeah, sure.
Really meet the target.
I think we can, and I think we can throw the gauntlet down to corporate entities and say, try and outdo each other to make sure we hit that target in record time. But once again, Mr. Bush, thank you for that, and we really hope they can manage it, and we think they will. Now on to our fifth story. Yeah, many organizations tend to lose what they call institutional memory. You know, people come, they work in the organization, they leave, and then that's it. They never call on them for their experience, and sometimes the organization can suffer. This is something that the GCCI has decided to remedy. Have a look.
Former Presidents Shabel El-Haj and Abdoulaye Touré commended the current GCCI leadership for recognizing their contribution to the growth of the Chamber and gave assurances of their unflinching commitment to support the Chamber to attain its development objectives.
I promise you we'll stop by from now, every now and then to say hi. And anytime, you know, I think you've done a great job, and, you know, I think we should be recognized. And you've kept the mantle very high. So we just pray that anytime I'm called upon, I will, whatever I can participate, I will surely do that.
So I was very much elated when I think I was in the US, when you had the AGM. And of course, you made the presentation as to why this should happen. And I saw it as a stepping stone that other institutions, both public and private, should follow suit. Because the English have a saying that experience is the best teacher. And in this room, collectively, we have over 200 years of experience managing and running a Chamber of Commerce.
Over 200 years of experience managing and running the Chamber of Commerce. And I said in the intro to that the kind of institutional memory sometimes gets lost. You go to an organization, somebody was there, they might have been president or chairman for 5, 10, 15 years. They go and that's it. And they never call on them, they never call on their experience to tell them about, you know, what worked, what didn't work. But this surely a good thing for GCCI. It's the first time they've done it.
Absolutely, and when you just look at those two ex-presidents, Shabel El-Haj and Backstreet, today, going way back to Jawara's period.
Yes.
Huge experience, really. And we know that GCCI, for instance, way back in the 80s, when we were sort of on economic recovery program, GCCI was so significant as an advisor to government. So these institutions always had a big voice. They had this significance, this presence, as it were, you know, bodies to be listened to, that sort of thing. It's just that afterwards, with the 22 years, that most of these institutions really lost it, as it were. They lost their way, as it were. So I think that now they are on the way to recovery. This is a fantastic idea. I wish that every sector will have their own advisory council.
well, I'm glad you said that, because that was the point I was going to pick up, and that's why I chose that particular segment, because he said both public and private sector. Because you and I have been used to sitting at our desk and hearing people talk about a workshop to validate this, that and the other, and they've done a survey, they've done analysis, they've spoken to people. It seems people go into these organizations, sometimes it's the civil service organizations or public sector bodies, and they only seem to talk to the staff there. I don't get the sense that they speak to the people who were there and had left. And you know what is said in that video is very appropriate. You know, speak to people in both public and private sector, learn from their experience.
Absolutely. So this is really what the problem is. I remember there was a time during Jammeh's period, we were told that we are in the top 3 of brain drain, that sort of thing.
Right.
So something happened. There was an assault, as it were, on public institutions. So the best minds left. So there was a vacuum of people who came on didn't really have a good apprenticeship, as I call it.
We saw that during the GRC.
Absolutely.
People who'd gone to the top of their profession, supposedly, on you know, through nepotism and so on, rather than experience or everything else. And it affected.
Absolutely. So we have to be honest with ourselves. Throughout the period, there was bad governance. People who were working in public institutions, I mean, to be quite honest, you were not really following good practice, as it were. It was all, you know, to satisfy Jammeh all the time and that sort of thing. So what is good governance? What is good practice? Possibly that's something that we need to relearn. Bring back people who were credited the whole world. Yes,
Exactly.
good governance.
And we know there are Gambians, they're spread around the world.
They're all over the world.
Highly regarded.
Highly regarded. Go to most of these institutions. You have Gambians there and all of that. But what do you have here? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Not that experience. I was just talking to somebody the other day. He said that he was talking to somebody from Swaziland.
Right.
He said to the Gambian, he said, you know, with you guys, the energy problems you're having, well, funnily, you know, it was a Gambian who came over and solved it for us. Bachibalde. You do see stuff like that. So our people are outside solving all the country's problems, whilst we've got them here, and people who are here, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't seem as if they can do it.
Well, thanks for that, Mr. Mboj, and that brings us nicely to time for a break at the end of that fifth story, and join us after the break. Don't go away.
The best product in town is back. QCell's MiFi router. Get the best MiFi in the country for just $2,800 and connect up to 15 users with 4G internet speeds and a long-lasting battery life. So rush now to any of our customer care locations and get the best for less while stocks last. For more info, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Senior Boss, the Gambia's quality network. We innovate, others follow.
Hello and welcome back after that break. You're watching QTV and you're watching The Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, and here co-presenting is my friend and colleague, Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we've had 5 really good stories. Anyone just joining us, and we've got 5 really good stories still to go, so do hang around. Now, we keep mentioning the fact that there are going to be elections in the Gambia coming up. Of course, probably the most important one is the December the 4th, when there will be a presidential election. And so various people have been gathering, various actors, including the youth, to talk about political dialogue. Have a look.
This particular training has been put together, bringing together youth that are in political parties, and for them to be trained on how they can peacefully lead through debates a peaceful and governable Gambia. So we found out that it was important to bring them together.
A peaceful and governable Gambia. Mr. Mboj, what I liked about this particular story is that many of the ones we see, they talk about we're targeting the youth. This particular one targeted the ones who belong to political party, sort of youth wings of political parties. A good thing?
Oh, absolutely. It's just that I hope that this youth wing, as you call it, they become self-consciously that.
Yes.
Then you can even challenge your leaders.
Sure.
You see?
Sure.
I keep reminding them, I said, you know, we talk about Nelson Mandela and all about the ANC, but he was head of the youth wing. He was radical. Yeah. You know, the older guys were more conservative. He was radical. We talk about Nkrumah. I said, when Nkrumah as well, when he formed the he was part of the United Gold Coast Convention, wasn't he?
That's
and
right.
then before he formed his party, he was a radical one. So there's need for on all of these political parties to have a youth wing that is self-consciously so.
Sure.
Yes, you do not always agree with the party leader. No, that is unhealthy.
It really is, because I think these are the ones who have to apply a certain level of scrutiny to the leaders and hold them to account on things. Don't just follow, which is what tends to happen. And the reason I chose this particular one, because I'm glad you made that one, because I wanted to be sure that actually what we have are people who are politically active, and also being an activist should mean that you actually should ask difficult questions even of your own party, not just be slavishly deployed here, there and everywhere, but ask difficult questions. Why are we doing this? Why should we do this? And so on.
I said that culture of deference, really, it vitiates all sorts of things, whereas we know that democracy thrives really on the discussion, different parties, as it were, the thesis, antithesis, that out of that clash, something better comes.
That's right.
It's a wonderful process, method of arriving at reasonably, workable, conclusions. So it is healthy. when I disagree with my party leader, it doesn't mean that I disrespect you. No. It is really an intellectual sort of swords play, as it were. So this intellectual game.
That's an important point, isn't it? Because in our sub-region and probably in other parts of Africa, young people asking questions can be deemed to be insolent, insubordinate, and downright, cheeky, when actually they're not being any of those things. They're actually just asking some questions that need to be asked.
That's it. So only they can change things.
Sure.
For the first time, really, I mean, youth really outnumber the over 65s, as it were. We know that more than 60%, isn't it? Some will even say 70% of the population, the youth. For the first time, they can use, for instance, something like elections as a tool for protests.
Absolutely.
But we also know that in other statistics that they don't tend to go and vote. No. Even though recently in Zambia the youth vote made a difference.
I think what was encouraging for me is that when the IEC issued the numbers of youth that had registered had gone up quite significantly. And I thought, well, they're not going to register just for the hell of it. Maybe this time they are going to vote, because notoriously they've not been kind of known to be voters, really.
Absolutely, but we just can't help it. I understand that 65% of our population is under 25.
Indeed.
Can you imagine? Yeah, so we just can't help it that you have more years the register.
Especially as youth is 18 to 35.
So now it's just the next step.
Sure.
Would you be bothered on the day to wake up, I don't know, go and queue? You may go to some constituencies where you may have long queues. Sure. Would you be bothered to be there? Yeah. Are you sufficiently...
That would be the test, wouldn't it?
That would be the test. So to register is one thing, to get up and go and vote is quite another. And when we both, as we say it all the time, can we avoid more of these ethnic considerations, then focus on the policies.
That's right.
Can we push really, the youth can do this, can we push our candidates to really focus more on policy than the personality? I mean, personality matters, but just give it its just place, huh? It's quite secondary.
It shouldn't be the overarching one.
At all.
No, you're right. So thanks for that. But yes, I mean, we hope that the young people who are part of this kind of youth wings of parties ask relevant, pertinent questions and push your leaders, because as we keep saying, youth unemployment is high, and so those are some of the questions. How are you going to create jobs for youth? Those are some of the things you should be asking.
Job creation.
Yeah, it's key. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Now on to our next story, which is to do with a female air traffic controller. Again, something that I think Gambians have every reason to be proud of, and also I think she is an inspiration. Have a look.
Giving up was not in me. I said it to myself, no matter how tough it is, I'll go to the end. If it was given up, I would have given up when I newly started, because people used to call me and they would tell me, you cannot do this. This is not for you, because women came and ran away, and I know you will also run away one day. I say no to that. So those were the things that keep me motivated to reach where I am today.
The path to becoming an air traffic controller is not a quick and easy one. The mother of two share with us how she balanced her marital and matrimonial roles with her work.
I am at home, I am a wife, but when I am in the office, I am an air traffic controller. Any stress back home, I have to know that I don't have to take it to my workplace. So you need a man that understands the nature of the job that you do in order for that marriage to work. And I thank God at least that my husband understands the nature of my job.
It's amazing how life can work out. I chose that story a few days ago, and yet today, just minutes before we came to the studio, I actually met that husband she was referring to, because they happened to be here in QTV and she was recording a program for Youth Dialogue. Mr. Mboj, an understanding husband, but of course that's not why I chose the story. It's about the kind of inspiring, about her tenacity. In the broader sense, we talk about women being involved in politics, but not in at the sharp end. But surely, Marama Jallow there, an inspiration.
In the voice. The confidence sort of exuded in the voice, the intelligence.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, being the first. That in itself, that accolade is good.
You can never take it away
You
from
never,
her.
nobody will ever
Yeah.
take it away.
Sure.
And she's just shown us why.
Indeed, indeed.
Goal setting.
This is it.
I am going to be this.
Yes.
The determination, the resilience.
Sure. And you know, if people are regular QTV watchers, I hope they watch Youth Dialogue, because she's on there. And you know, I would like more young women to see her and gain the confidence from what she has gone through, because she explains her story in some details, including the frustrations. And when you hear the frustrations and you hear how some people gave up, but there was a tenacity there, there was an intelligence there. This is what I want to do. Nothing is going to sway me from this path. And she stuck to it.
Absolutely, and that's really what it takes. And wonderful example. I'm a wife. I'm an a traffic controller. Absolutely, how this. So this is going to be. We all know that this has really been the problems that women have been facing over the years. Men. We are really the issue here.
Yeah.
So this is it. If we want sort of the new woman,
yes, quite.
People like her, there has to be the new man.
Yeah, well, you know, I hope a chap I gave a lift to is watching this, because I gave somebody a lift and we started talking about this thing, and he was flatly saying that he would not allow his wife to work. But what was even more shocking was that he then told me that his wife was more qualified than he was.
Now, can you imagine that?
And yet he did not allow her to work.
Yeah, so possibly more ambitious women will never come to you to marry them. Then you will say, what
I was
you
quite
going
surprised,
to
and we had quite an argument about it in the car.
Oh, absolutely. Things have changed. People keep on invoking tradition and all of that. I said, hey, look, I'm a bit of a Marxist here. The reason why we have all these values was just because of an economic relationship. You know, we are mostly a poor country, so we value people who are kind.
Yeah.
A lot of people needed to be given this. So maybe during that agrarian phase, you know what I mean, there were reasons why they had such relationships,
That's right.
you know, such a system. But we have moved on.
Yes.
We know that scientifically men are not smarter than women.
Right.
And these days with technology, you don't need muscle so much.
Exactly.
You need more of your brain.
Yeah.
And if you want our country to really go forward, I mean, half of the population, can you imagine?
More
women?
than half.
More than half. So we need them all in it.
Sure.
So the narrative must change. There must be the new man, just as we keep saying that there must be the new African, the new Gambian, for our countries to develop. The old ways do not work. I'm sorry, we didn't invent the old ways. Most other societies were like that. But when they saw the need to move out, then they did.
Yeah.
So now we've taken all the traditional stuff of the world and say, oh, we own it.
Yeah, exactly.
Please.
And yet we don't.
We don't.
So Mariam, once again, you're doing a great job, and to your husband, who's a former journalist, in fact, and former editor of The Observer. Met him today. So yeah, great story. And as I said, watch this program, but also watch Youth Dialogue. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. And now on to something else that's happening. We'd said, you know, in Africa we were getting a bit smug. There hadn't been coup d'etats and so on. And then all of a sudden they started popping up in the region and in the sub-region. The most recent being in Guinea-Conakry. Now, the junta there came up with a very interesting prospect recently. Have a look.
The junta announced on Monday a transitional charter that confirmed the military leader Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya as the president following the coup earlier this month. The charter also provides a government headed by a civilian prime minister and a national transitional council that will temporarily act as parliament. The 81-member council is drawn from society, including business leaders, political parties, religious organizations, diplomats and professional organizations. At least 30% of the council members must be female.
Now, these Guineans they have a sense of timing and a sense of history, I'm assuming, because Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya was sworn in on the 1st of October, which is not their independence. Their independence day is the 2nd of October. But 1st of October was the date in 1958 when Sékou Touré announced Guinea is to France he was saying, Guinea is no longer one of your possessions. We are breaking away, we are declaring independence, we are not waiting for you to hand it to us. All the other Francophone countries, Senegal and all the others, they stayed. Guinea broke away and the West termed him this dissident, and that happened 1st of October, and then 1st of October is when Mamadi was sworn in as the new president. Mr. Mboj, coincidence, or did they choose their date specifically?
We hope it will just be as momentous as it were. Quite interesting to ask. It will be interesting to ask whether it's just coincidence or with this particular one it was chosen, you know, for it. But absolutely so. So yes, it seems as if he wants to bring in an inclusive sort of transitional structure, as it were. 81-member council, religious leaders from all over the place will be the head of it, of course. But again, you will have a civilian prime minister. That's quite interesting, and that and the gender awareness, 30% women. Yeah. So we will see, you know, ECOWAS, in spite of what they've been freezing assets, haven't they?
That's right.
And all sanctions and all the rest of it. But again, in that case, ECOWAS, in many ways, they sort of compromised themselves. Yeah. When Alpha Condé announced his second term, ECOWAS should have said something. Yes. Shouldn't allow that, and Ivory Coast as well. So that is why, you know, not many people will really listen to them. I'm not sure what muscle they have, what they can do. So now really depends on what these people do.
Sure. And there are two interesting things in this one, because we have two more stories just quickly. One is that he has announced that nobody who is a member of the council or the junta will be allowed to stand in either national or local elections. So that's one thing. The other is that they haven't given a timetable for how long this provisional arrangement will be in existence before they go to elections. Again, deliberate, surely.
Absolutely. But again, with these things, can you really give a timetable? There's bound to be some artificial. Can we really give a timetable? So one would just see, one would keep an eye on that one. Cannot really blame them for that. And it's quite interesting to say that these members now will be disqualified from standing in the next election. That's right. So that's just to get your eye off that, one, so that perhaps you can focus on whatever you're doing. Maybe the one after that or the one after that, who knows? Perhaps they will have a provision where they will cater to that, because I think it will also be unfair that you should disqualify me for life. I am not sure if that is
I think it just means in the next one.
The next one. Sure. Yeah, that helps a lot. So that self-interest is sort of mitigated a bit because there's really nothing for you. Then maybe you will work in the interest of the country.
Yeah, let's hope so. And just to close on that particular story, it was interesting that one of the 10 photographs that he had issued for his presidential swearing in showed him seated at the presidential desk with a photograph of Sékou Touré and of Lansana Conté. Interesting one. And now on to our penultimate story. We're used to hearing about drug busts by the police. There's been a recent big one. Have a look at this.
At the end of the day, if your objective is to help people, bringing in something that is poisoning the minds of people, in reality it defeats such objective. So therefore, we continue to call on heads of household, those who are responsible for managing premises, buildings. When we give our property to people, let us take it upon ourselves to, on time-to-time basis, to be visiting these places and then see the conditions of this place. Because it's not secret that you enter inside here, immediately you will see what is happening there.
I don't want to pick a fight with my friend there from the Drug Law Enforcement Agency, but Mr. Mboj, if I rent you a premises and you're paying the rent on time, and because one of the guys there is a British chap who's actually a director of a company in Britain as well, you're paying your rent on time and you're probably paying more than I would charge a fellow Gambian, am I going to be coming to check as long as I'm getting the rent?
Possibly not.
Yeah.
It would be a good idea.
Yeah.
but you know how it is. Like most good ideas, people just don't follow it if they don't have any overriding reason and immediate present danger. If they don't have such reasons, then perhaps a lot of people don't tend to go. As long as Well, perhaps the only time that they come round is when the rent is due and you haven't paid.
Well, this is it.
That's the only time they come round.
And another one of the reasons why I chose the story is because what the police are saying, we can't go into too much detail because obviously the case is still to come before the courts. But they're saying that they'll be keeping an eye because this person came here supposedly for a charity, set up a charity, and yet they were using that as cover for this. And he says, you know, you can't really be charitable if you're doing something that's going to harm countries. And by the way, I checked the Charity Commission. That charity has not filed accounts since 2018. They're way behind their things. But they were saying that this kind of throws the light on other charities, surely. People start scrutinizing them, which might be unfair, really.
Might be unfair, but again, it has opened up something else. Possibly, there are other charities who've got that foundation or the organization as a cover for something else, for something more devious behind the scenes. Would it be child trafficking? Would it be, you know what I mean? So, yes, it may be unfair, but again, there might be something in it. So let us just be careful and look into it. It's an opportunity, just open a window for us. We see what can potentially happen with these charities, so we can now be more circumspect and be more monitoring these things more.
Greater scrutiny. Thank you for that. Final story, not one that we're going to linger too long on, but it was World Rabies Day recently. Have a look.
Africa and Asia are the continents in which 95% of the cases occur. Half of the cases involve children under 15 years of age, with rural poor population suffering the most. Musa Jallo of the Gambia Horse and Donkey Trust said that there should be a new approach which should involve going to schools and teaching the children about prevention measures.
Normally in the Gambia, there are few adult people who rear dogs, but most dogs are reared by kids. So if we talk to these kids and try to get them know what rabies is, I think that will really help, and they can go back at home and teach the elders.
Despite the social media and radio campaign in preparedness for the day at Crab Island in Banjul, disappointingly, dog owners failed to turn up to get their dogs vaccinated.
As I said, we don't have much time for this one, Mr. Mbodje, a short one. Many dog owners did not turn up, and many did not turn up last year. Lots of publicity, but very few people turn up. Why is it? Is it because we think rabies is not a problem here?
No, not really. I have to be honest, I'm more scared of the stray dogs.
Yeah.
Because I know people who own dogs, they tend to vaccinate their dogs,
Right.
they tend to take care of their dogs, they tend to take their dogs to vets and that sort of thing. They are more mindful of that. Perhaps that is why most of them never bothered to go. And very few people really own dogs as pets. You may have a dog living in the compound, but then you will give it food and all of that. But I'm not sure if any particular person is in charge and will be thinking like that.
Yes, where I live, they're both pets and guard dogs. They bark a lot.
All right, but you will see that the owners will take care of them, vaccinating them, doing stuff like that. But I wonder, what about the stray dogs? What do we do
last year
about
what
them?
they did was they went round and actually got stray dogs, and those were the ones that they ended up vaccinating. I think this year, for all sorts of reasons, they weren't able to, because I think one of the areas they went to last year is flooded this year because of heavy rains. And so they weren't able to, in Banjul this was.
Absolutely, and we know that bite from these infected dogs sort of affect 99% of cases.
That's right.
So that's really what the key is. And sometimes in certain areas I see lots of dogs. Some of them can be quite aggressive, you know, and that sort of thing. So really, I think maybe that should be at the focus. Stray dogs.
Stray dogs, the focus. Mr. Mbodje, I think we have to end on that note. Thank you for all your interjections so far. Most welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching. And as always, really appreciate those who stop us on the street and say how much you enjoy the program. Until next week, goodbye.